Hello, I am Allison. I am, 2 or 3 years late into knitting my folklore cardigan. So as you can see, I am already done with my Taylor Swift inspired folklore cardigan, and I'm going to get into all of the nitty-gritty details and then basically show you the whole process of me knitting this sweater. So I've done a replica video before, and there was a little bit of chat in the comments about me not tracking how much time that I spent on it. So I did this time. I ruthlessly, timer on, tracked how much time I spent knitting on this project. So all of the time is sweater only. I'm not talking about any of the video time for this video, but we are gonna get into the real cost of hand knit items. But first, just like a slight background on my Swiftie history. So I am I guess, newer Swiftie. I started listening to Taylor Swift with the Folklore and Evermore albums. I listened to them both after Evermore had already come out, and it, full convert, no questions asked. You should see my Spotify Wrapped. I am fully a Swiftie now. Last year I was in the top 1% of Taylor Swift listeners, so I'm not messing around with my Taylor Swift fandom. So to start off, why am I knitting this sweater when you can just buy it? So I would say the first and most important reason for me is that I don't love the sweater. I just don't love the shape of it. It is too oversized and it's way too long, and it's just not my style. I do, however, love cable knit sweaters. I love to knit cables. I find it so fun. So I liked the general idea of the sweater, but not the size of it. And for real, I hate the stars. I hate the little stars in the elbow. It's not for me, not into it. And I love to knit, and I have done reproduction-ish videos like this before. I will link to the one that I did for the row last year, and I thought that this would be a fun challenge for me as a knitter because it is a lot of different elements that I have never done before. I've never knit a sweater separate in pieces, I've never seamed an entire garment together like this before, and I've never knit an all-over cable sweater. So there was quite a lot of things that I wanted to do and learn with this sweater, while making adjustments to make it significantly smaller, significantly shorter, and just kind of more my style. So let's get into the nitty-gritty details. I have my spreadsheet in front of me, and I have all of my totals. So let's just go through it. So this whole process took me a full exactly 30 days, 11 of which was no knitting, because you'll see I ran out of yarn with very little of the sweater left to do, so it was actually 19 days spent on the project. In those 19 days, I spent 43 hours working on the sweater, which averages out to about 2-ish hours per day, which honestly isn't that bad. I kind of thought that it was gonna be worse, but it really went way more some days, way less other days. And I gotta say, 43 hours feels kind of low to me. I don't know, I genuinely have never tracked my time knitting anything before quite like this, so maybe that's just about right, but 43 hours does feel fast for a full-on, all-over cable knit sweater that is also seamed together, so there was quite a lot of finishing work in this. So let's run the numbers. Where I live, the minimum wage is currently $10.50. So at $10.50 per hour and 43 hours of work, that's $450 worth of time and effort put into this cardigan. But we are working on raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. I think it's next year it'll go up to $15 an hour. And that would be $644 worth of minimum wage time spent on this project. I used almost 5 skeins of yarn. I used Knit Picks woolen cotton. That is about $9.99 unless you get it on sale, but we're just gonna call it $50 worth of yarn. So depending on minimum wage, if we're at the lower minimum wage right now, that's about $500 for this sweater. And if you go for the $15 an hour minimum wage, that is $700 for this sweater. This is why, if you are not a knitter and you are watching this video, if you know someone who knits and they gift you a knitted item, it is so valuable. They have spent so much time working on that thing, so treat it as if it is a $700 sweater. I do think it's interesting to look at for things when we are talking about replicating a mass-produced item. So the Taylor Swift merch store has sold this cardigan quite a few times in a few different iterations, and I believe it's gone from anything between like $40 and $70, which is pretty cheap if we're comparing it to $700. Now, with all of that being said, let us go straight into the process of making this sweater. So for this project, I am using the Free Lion brand pattern, but I'm making quite a few alterations to it. I am knitting it with a smaller yarn, smaller needles. So I am using a DK weight yarn, size 8 needles. I am knitting their smallest size, and I'm making some changes to the actual cable pattern, which I will get into in the process part of this video. Okay, so today is day 4. I'm just getting a couple of rows in on my lunch break before I have to get back to work. But I thought I would talk through how I'm remembering the pattern. So I am the kind of person who does not like to reference a pattern a whole lot as I'm knitting, because it just takes me out of the flow. It makes everything take a lot longer. And I just like read my knitting instead of like going row by row and trusting the pattern as opposed to trusting what I'm actually doing. So we've got quite a few different things going on. I only have 4 stitch markers on this panel as I'm going. So I have the first one that marks off when the, don't knock my camera. So the first one marks where the moss stitch ends on either side so that I don't mess up the patterning. And then the others are marking off the center cable section so that that doesn't get messed up either, because there's a certain number of stitches. It can only go so wide. So I need to keep in mind that these can't move around. Then there's 3 other different types of cables that are also used in this pattern, but they work at like the same rate. The 2 smaller cables cable every 4 rows, and the larger cable cables every 8 rows. And whenever you're cabling all of the cables at the same time. So it's always going to be the same row, and then you're always doing something in the center panel. That's every right side row, I should say. And then on the back side, you just replicate whatever it is that you did. So you knit the knits, you purl the purls, resolving everything so that you can do something different on the front side. So basically, I just know when to cable when the cables on the front look ready. Like, I'm not counting my rows, I'm not like tallying anything off. I've just like, in this amount of space, grown accustomed to when do I need to do these smaller cables, and then every other time of the smaller cables, you do the bigger cable. Although the other day I did need to drop down because the very first cable I did on this side, I did it the wrong direction. So by the time I finally got to doing that cable again, so I guess 8 rows later, I actually noticed that I did it wrong. So I had to drop down, fix the cable, go back up, and then keep knitting, which will never not feel like witchcraft to me. Whenever you like drop down and fix like a mistake in a pattern, dropping down in stockinette is one thing, but dropping down and fixing a cable pattern, every single time I do it, I'm like, it's brilliant. And I should also say that when I'm doing all of the cables on this pattern, I am doing cabling without a cable needle. And I can link down below the tutorial that I used when I was learning how to do it. I think it was actually a Brooklyn tweed video, so I can link that down below. But I really prefer cabling without a cable needle because, like I said, I really like staying in the flow. I like to just knit, you know, I don't like to have to fuss around with the cable needle. I don't like to have to reference back and forth the pattern. I just like to do it. So I've basically learned the skills to be able to do that. But I am getting pretty close to where I'm going to stop the back panel and start doing the armhole shaping. So I want this sweater to be cropped, but not like so cropped that like I won't ever really wear it. And generally what I go for when I'm wearing or when I'm knitting a cropped sweater is it has to like reach the waistband of a high-waisted pair of jeans. If it's any shorter than that, just I know myself and I'm just never going to wear it. So when I get this cable done, so I'm, I don't know, 4 rows away maybe, of completing like this part up here on this cable, when I get there, that's when I'm going to start doing the armhole shaping. So this is going by really quickly. I'm gonna keep at it, although now that I have this whole like chart memorized, and I know that the front and the sleeves are different. So not that it's a waste to memorize this chart, but I will have to memorize the new charts when I get to the front sides and the sleeves. Okay, but that is it for now, and I will check in with you later. So I have finished the entire back panel here, and I got started on the left side front. So the pattern has all of the cables going the same direction, so I have them mirrored here because I wanted them to kind of be pointing in towards each other. And I started, this is going to be the left side front, and this is the left side back. So I've been doing the cables the same, but I think I need to drop down and change the cable direction because eventually this is going to be a V-neck. So it's going to go up, straight, and then eventually it's gonna start going in like this. And I think I need the cables to work with the direction that they're going to be leaning. So I grabbed some double pointed needles. I'm going to drop down and switch these so they're all twisting. Instead of twisting this way, they're going to be twisting this way to go with the angle that the V-neck will be. And it might not be exact for the back, but that's all right. And there we go. Got all of the cables switched around so that it will follow the angle upwards when I start doing the neckline. So today is day 10 or 11, I think, and I have finished the entire back panel and both front panels. So now I'm getting started on the sleeves. And I've got a little bit of my lunch break left. The lighting is halfway decent today, and I thought I would get casting on for my first sleeve and have a little chat. So the back panel took longer than I think both of the front panels. So here we go. She's not gonna be like super cropped, but she'll be a little bit cropped. You can see I have the cables mirrored. She's looking gorgeous. And then both of the front panels have the cable kind of following the way that the angle of the V-neck works. These are super quick because by the time you get to here, there's so few stitches and each like row takes no time at all. But the sleeves, I was just reading the pattern for the sleeves, and I feel like it's gonna take more concentration than the front and back did, because instead of like taking away stitches and just staying in your same pattern, but you're taking away for like the armhole and the neckline shaping, for this you're adding stitches because you are knitting the sleeve from the bottom up or from the cuff upwards, and you basically are going to be increasing the stitches to taper the sleeve upwards as you get towards the armpit. So while you're increasing stitches, you are also adding in cables as you get to that point, but it starts in the same ribbing, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that and chit chat with you for a minute. So on theme with the cardigan, let's chat about Taylor Swift. So I am definitely a Folklore and Evermore convert. I actually didn't hear either of the albums until after both had come out. So Folklore and Evermore came out during the pandemic. They both came out in pretty quick succession, and they are both thematically pretty similar in being much more like indie folk kind of sound than a lot of her like pop or country albums. So I listened to both, and they're kind of like one and the same. The sound is so similar that it's really hard for me to differentiate the two albums, especially because when I listened to them, I had them both at the same time. So like Folklore and Evermore is more or less the same album to me. So I think Spotify recently did a thing for like the eras, which no, I have not gone to any of the concerts. I also have not attempted to go to any of the eras concerts, although I've seen, I feel like the entire show on TikTok, but Spotify recently did this like your eras thing to show you how much of each album you've listened to. So I think my top 5 in order were Folklore, Evermore, Lover, Midnights, and Reputation, which those are the albums that I listen to. I sometimes listen to Red, and I listened to the Speak Now Taylor's version, but I gotta say the early albums don't do it for me. And I know a lot of that is like not having the nostalgia of being a fan at that time. Like I remember when her debut album came out, I think when I was in high school, and I just remember like being a hater for a couple of reasons. I am very much someone who doesn't like country music, or what I personally deem to be bad country music, which is like Bo Burnham has a great sketch on like what I would consider to be bad country music, and I think when she was putting on her kind of fake southern accent, which she used to use this kind of fake southern accent even in interviews and stuff, and it just like really didn't ring true to me, and I already didn't really like country music, so I was very much a hater of the early Taylor Swift days. And it's funny because like you can't deny that her vocals have gotten so good over the years. So in the re-records, I am enjoying like some of the earlier albums more, but I still don't listen to them. Like I don't go out of my way to listen to like Fearless Taylor's version, but I do think I am just going to be like feral for the Reputation Taylor's version. I know like currently as I am, knitting this, the 1989 re-record has been announced, and a lot of people are super excited because that was kind of like her biggest album at that time. And a lot of people have a ton of nostalgia for that, but I don't really. I have listened to the 1989 album, the original, and it's fine, but I'm just like not into a lot of her like top hits. I've found that on pretty much every single album, my favorite songs are all in the back half. Like I feel like she stacks the album with all of like the radio kind of songs first, and those tend to not be my favorites. And then the back half of like every single album tends to have all of my favorite songs from that album. Like the Midnight's 3 a.m. version, all of those songs is like where the Midnight's album starts for me. I like start at Glitch or Great War and go that way. I am super curious as to how other people feel about her re-records because I think they're great. I understand like the whole like reason behind it, and the masters were stolen away from her and she wants to own her own music, but I'm just really enjoying like her more mature vocals for these songs, although some of them are kind of funny because she wrote them as a teenager, so they have such teenage energy, but with her more mature voice, singing songs like Enchanted and stuff like that, I just find it very funny. But I know a lot of people have like so much nostalgia for the original versions that even though I personally think her voice is a lot better as she has gotten older, I know a lot of people still prefer the original versions. 2, 3, ooh, I was counting. And on like a similar note, I really do think that her like songwriting has improved as she's aged as well, because a lot of her like early albums, there's a lot of like princess imagery and, you know, fighting dragons and you know, fairy tale kind of stuff, which just, it's never been something that I particularly connected with. But then like Folklore and Evermore onwards have just been like, it's poetry, like it really is. Which I know is kind of funny because Lover is also in my top albums, and I get why it's like such a divisive album, because it really bounces around on theme, especially from like one song to the next, because they have, I think it's Soon You'll Get Better, which is a song about her mom fighting cancer. And it goes straight into False God, which is a very sexy song, which is just a real tonal shift on that album. I feel like this section has just kind of turned into an unpopular opinion, so please like don't eviscerate me in the comments. So like I said, the 1989 re-record has just been announced, and I've been thinking, like, what do I think the next order is going to be? I think it's definitely going to go 1989, then Reputation, then Debut. I think those are the only three that are left to re-record, and I do think that she will have all of the re-records done by the time that the Eras tour is done. And then who knows what's next? I mean, I think she's directing a movie at some point in time soon, so that's gonna be a whole new adventure. When is she going to fit that in amongst her worldwide tour? If you are also like a Folklore and Evermore girly, let me know what other musicians you listen to. I have been listening to the new Hozier album on repeat. His work is also, it's just poetry. It's truly poetry set to beautiful music. His songwriting is just out of this world. So I've been listening to Unreal Unearthed a ton lately. I've been listening to a lot of Noah Kahan, some Phoebe Bridgers, some Lana Del Rey. But I am curious as to what other very like cozy Folklore Evermore kind of music that you listen to, because I am always looking for more cozy music. Okay, favorite Taylor Swift songs. I feel like really depends on my mood, like what mood am I in. It's the same thing with like which album I'm going to listen to, because I listen to music pretty much like all day at work. And I feel like if I'm like really needing to get stuff done, like I just need to power through a bunch of tasks, I'll listen to Reputation. If I'm in a bad mood and I want to be in a better mood, or if I'm just in a really good mood, I will listen to Lover. And if I just need like cozy time, or if I'm knitting or just kind of chilling out, that's where we get to like the Folklore Evermore. And I do find it kind of funny that Midnights is in my top 5. I must have just listened to it a ton when it first came out, because I feel like it's not really in heavy rotation anymore. All right, I gotta finish this row and get back to work. Okay, so I just finished work like a half an hour ago, and I was taking another look at the pattern because I know I'm gonna like get into the sleeves tonight, and I know just from looking at it earlier that the description for the sleeves, like the instructions for the sleeves, are a little bit murky. And then I was really getting into it and I was like, there's way too many cables here. Like there's more cables on this pattern than there are in the actual cardigan that I'm trying to make. So let me show you what I've done here. So I wrote like the very basic instructions of when you're doing increases and how many stitches I need. And then I drew out what that would look like so that I would understand like what comes next. And I was like, wait a second, all of these are cables. There's no gaps besides the lines are the purls that are in between each cable. And then if there's any extra stitches, then it's moss stitch. And I counted the stitches and there isn't any for my size. I'm knitting the smallest size. And this is a free pattern, by the way, so I'm not giving away anything that's not already available. Anyway, I decided this was too many stitches. I looked at the actual cardigan and I knew that I wanted some moss stitch in here to break up all of the cables. So I basically redid it with a different setup. So this, the very beginning is gonna be the same. So it starts, there's the center cable, a really skinny cable next to it, and then the much larger cable on the other side of that. Then I'm giving it some breathing room with some moss stitch, then the medium-sized cable, and then whatever's left will be moss stitch again. So the only thing that has a little bit of wiggle room is this moss stitch right here. I basically am going to do 6 stitches is what I've planned so far, but if I feel like that looks weird, I could do more or less and then move these 4 stitches around, because these outer sections of moss stitch are going to be directly underneath the arm and you're not really going to see them. So if it turns out that they need a little bit more room or a little bit less room, that's a great way for space to kind of disappear, because you're not going to see it anyway, it's underneath the arm. So basically I have my little cheat sheet, which is now different than the pattern that I'm going to be using for the sleeves on my cardigan to give it a little bit more breathing room in between the stitches, so it's not just cable, cable, cable all in a row. And I will put, I guess, a better description of what I have done to change the sleeves on my Ravelry page, which will be linked in the description. So here I have sleeve number 1, and then this is where I ran out of yarn on sleeve number 2. So I have a good, basically half of the sleeve to go, which is a shame, but I only ordered 1 more skein of yarn, so I'm hoping now that that's gonna be enough to actually finish the sleeve and do the neckline ribbing, and I will sew everything together with a different yarn just in case. I'm so bummed to be putting this project on hold for now, because I've been having like such great momentum the entire time getting all of the different pieces knit up. I'm so close. I only have half of 1 sleeve left to go, but it's gonna be like a solid week at least until I get my yarn. But I guess I will check back in when I have the rest of the yarn to finish the sweater. So it is Wednesday night tonight, and I ordered my new yarn last week on Friday during the day, so it still hasn't shipped yet, and it's not here. So I'm feeling kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like taking the wind out of my sails a little bit. So I think I am going to block the pieces that I already have done, not the sleeves, just basically the vest part, the back and the front parts. So I can at least like use some of this time that I'm waiting, and then I'll block the sleeves at the same time so I can make sure that they're the exact same size. So I am up in the attic. I have just washed everything, laid it all out to dry, measured it. It did grow quite a bit, which I did expect because it was super washed, but I was able to kind of push it, smush it back into shape. So it's a little bit bigger than the original pieces were, but that's a good thing. So I will show you the little setup. I have the back piece on these drying kind of mesh thing. It helps it dry quite a lot faster. And then the both front pieces are just on a towel. We'll just leave these here for a day or so, and hopefully they will dry quickly. So it's been about a week since I have worked on this cardigan, because I still don't have my yarn yet, and it still hasn't even shipped yet, which is really frustrating. But I figured I might as well take this time to seam up what I have so far. So I have a vest with no neckband. But I am liking the fit so far. So obviously the neckline is quite wide, so it should connect in front without being too tight. But I think overall the fit is quite nice. And hopefully once I get the yarn, we'll be done pretty quickly. Today is Saturday the 16th, and look what finally arrived. I have finally got the final skein of yarn that I needed. I ordered this on September 1st. Today is the 16th. Last time I checked shipping, or the tracking for the shipping, it said that it wasn't gonna get here until Thursday. So this is way ahead of when I expected it, but I still feel like that took forever for one skein, but whatever. I finally have it. I'm gonna go cake it up, and then I can finish the second sleeve. I have like 4 inches of knitting left to do, and then the neckline. But finally, we're getting somewhere. I'm going to be able to finish this week, I think, even with blocking. So let's get going. Just kidding, I have like 10-ish inches left to go, but only a couple of increases. So let's get going. So I got all of the neckline stitches cast on. I have the first row done. I measured my ball of yarn to see how much yarn it takes to do one row, and it is 3 grams, but like ish, you know, like who's to say how accurate that scale is? This is all of the blue that I have left. I need to do 2 back and forth with the blue, and I have exactly 6 grams. So I am going to try to do both rows with the blue. I have literally like inches, like 2 or 3 inches of little scraps of the blue that I also saved. So hopefully I will eke out both rows, but it's looking good. I have the sleeves set to block upstairs. Those are drying, but I could probably finish knitting the neckline tonight. I'm definitely not going to get the cast off done because that's going to take me ages to do a sewn cast off, but I'm getting close. All right, all of the neckline ribbing is done. I am going to spend probably the next several nights casting off on the neckline, and then all I have to do is attach the sleeves and then I'm done. I am tired. It has been a long work day, but there is a 75% chance that I am going to finish the cardigan tonight after work. I got all of the neckline done yesterday. The sleeves are dry, so all I have to do is sew them on. So we're this close to the finish end. All right, I am in my office. I have my big box of buttons, so you know what that means. She's basically done. I just need to find the buttons that I want to use for this and sew them on, and that's literally it. That's all I have left to do. I got the sleeves sewn on and sewn up last night. I used a tutorial that I'm going to link below because I looked through a lot of mattress stitch tutorials and a lot of like sweaters seaming videos, and none of them quite weren't speaking to me. And because of that, I kind of an ugly seam at the top of the shoulders, but that's fine. But this tutorial that I used last night that I will have linked here or in the description really made it clear. It made it a lot easier. So that was really, really helpful for my first seamed garment. But I'm really surprised at how much I didn't dislike seaming. I feel like people always complain about seaming sweaters, and it is definitely more tedious. Like there's a lot more of like finishing work to do, but it's not that bad. But let's pick buttons. I have just like I literally have a giant box full of buttons. These guys, gorgeous, much too large, I think, and I only need 3 buttons. These ones are kind of tortoiseshell-y. These might be the best pick, and they're the right size, I think. Let's test them through the buttonhole first before I start digging into this box, because like I said, this is truly like... Actually, I have 2 options. So I have these slightly lighter, or it's more contrast. So like The lighter parts are lighter, the darker parts are darker, and they're much more rounded. And then these very much flat, and it's more like ambery kind of button. So let's take a look. These are the 3 button options. We have these ones, kind of ambery, and these ones a little bit, they're like chunkier, they're fatter, and more rounded. All right, so obviously not exactly how they're gonna be placed, and I wouldn't do every other, but I'm kind of feeling these guys. I didn't think I would. I instantly pulled these and thought that this was gonna be the one, but I think it might be these. But I need to actually get to work today. So I'm gonna open my laptop, get started, and then maybe at lunchtime I'll decide between these buttons. Okay, buttons are on. I am gonna go change my entire outfit because this is not the vibe for me. And then I'm going to see how this actually looks. Okay, so finished sweater wrap-up thoughts. I am thrilled with the fit on this. It is exactly what I was looking for. I really wanted it to be like skimming the hips. I wanted it to be like able to close, but not super tight. You wear it open pretty much 100% of the time anyway, but I wanted to be able to button it without it looking like way too tight. And I will say that as I was sewing this together, I did notice some mistakes in the knitting that I hadn't noticed pre-finishing, so whoops, those live there now. But if I were to knit this sweater again, I would definitely size down quite a bit on the ribbing. I find the ribbing, especially on the cuffs, pretty loosey-goosey, and on the neckline, or the button band, I suppose. The button band is pretty loose. I feel like I just prefer the structure of a double knit button band, but they're a huge pain. Like, I understand that's so much more effort, but I do think it looks really nice and it holds its shape so much better than ribbing. Like, I have taken the buttons on and off of this a couple of times and it's like stretching out the button band kind of a lot. I don't think that I ever told the story, but I did dye this blue yarn. It's the same yarn, it's the wool and cotton. I just tossed it into a dye bath when I was dyeing something else. But even though I washed that yarn a couple of times before using it, it did bleed a tiny bit into the sweater, which is disappointing, but whatever, it is what it is. I don't think that it's bled so much to be like, yikes, like it's not so horribly obvious that it looks terrible, but it is something that annoys me a little bit, but there's nothing I can do about that now. If you have made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. I look forward to chatting all things Taylor Swift in the comments down below. You can find my socials everywhere, it's just Allison Marie Knits, and I'll see you next time. Bye.